Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined each and every single day by Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton. We are 10 days away. I don't even think I need to ask everybody's favorite number 10. That should be a gimme. But tell us your favorite number 10. Tell us where you're checking in from, what you're drinking, get your questions in. And fellas, let's start.
I was gonna say, you know who's not their favorite 10? Steve Sarkisian. Is not Steve Sarkisian's favorite 10.
So can either of you tell me who this number 10 is?
Oh my God.
Is that man? I don't know.
I mean, is that the Plano Wildcats?
I'm gonna give you a little more hint here.
No,
Man, I'm still not there.
Chat, we need your help.
Drew Brees' uncle.
Marty Akins.
There you go.
I saw him play in the Blue Bonnet Bowl. I think it's 1975. Blue Bonnet Bowl. That was one of my first football games I remember that my dad took me to. Texas was down to Colorado at halftime. And my uncle tried to get my dad to leave because it was New Year's Eve. And I was just this little kid. I didn't know people went out on New Year's Eve or anything like that. And my dad said, "Oh, let's watch the third quarter." Texas stormed back to win with Earl Campbell. And his brother Tim actually blocked the punt in that game. Yeah, that was one of my first memorable experiences of the Texas Longhorns. I think he ended up being the state comptroller at one point. Marty Akins did. So he's had a long career as well.
Bobby, I think you'll be able to nail this one right off the bat.
Yeah, that's I can name the offensive tackle there too, by the way. that's Peter Gardere being protected by Charles Chuck Johnson. Gardere is still the only Texas quarterback to win 4 against the Oklahoma Sooners.
Boy, you know what you see with that picture? The visors sure have changed.
Yep.
Yeah, they have.
Visors have changed. I mean, how you even drop back as a quarterback has changed. That was more the side step. Now they do the overstep. Yeah.
And then
Gardere was good I always thought Peter Gardere actually had a really quick drop back for that.
And by the way, the footballs have changed as well.
And then I lost it here. Bear with me as I bring up everybody's favorite number 10. I think this should be an easy one.
Yeah.
Except Sark.
Yeah, except Sark.
Keep saying except Sark. Oh, because he lost that game?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Sark likes that number 10.
Ooh.
I think that's a big one. Sark's getting paid $10 million to like that number 10. He better like it.
Very true. Oh, very true. Well, guys, let's jump right into the news here. And practice resumed yesterday, and then the players met with the media afterward. What were y'all's takeaways from that?
I felt like there are several takeaways for me. One was Manny Muhammad talking a little bit about Gavin Holmes. Talking about the pass rush. He feels like Gavin Holmes has solidified himself as a real player in the Longhorn secondary, guys, and I think that's great. And then the second piece is he feels like the pass rush is getting home a little bit more this year than it did a year ago, and that should help him and the secondary as a whole this season. Those two things combined were big for me. From Manny Muhammad, Hayden Connor talked about the depth along the offensive line and the rotation. He feels like the Longhorns are moving in a good direction there. And then, you look at Vernon Broughton. I think that Vernon had some interesting things to say. CJ Vogel asked him about, the whole issue of getting married in the spring on the day of the spring game. And long story short, Vernon was like, "Look, if I didn't go to the wedding, my wife was going to kick my butt." So there was no do-overs on that. They tried to figure out when the spring game would actually be and move it around it, but they had to reserve the spot well before the spring game was announced. But he was a good sport about it, and looks like he's ready for a good senior year. I would add the other thing that Manny Muhammad had to say that I want to tie in today and talk a little bit here, Jerry and Blake, is just how much juice or jets that Silas Bolden adds to the offense. I wrote an article this morning, and I want to get into it now, if you don't mind, about surprises of fall camp. And Silas Bolden has been that, not necessarily because of his ability as a player, Jerry and Blake, but what I'm hearing behind the scenes, Jerry keeps calling him the Energizer Bunny with no batteries. That kind of energy can be contagious, especially to a young receiver group that didn't necessarily have a experienced leader prior to his arrival. Matthew Golden's not really that guy. Isaiah Bond, not really that guy. Silas Bolden is. The way he plays is a little contagious. And I think that of all the fall camp surprises, that's why Silas Bolden is it for me, not necessarily because he's been so good in practice, Jerry, but because he's a team-first player on top of it and provides that energy.
Yeah, I kind of brought up in our Monday night live stream comparison-wise with Sir'Jabari Rice. When Sir'Jabari Rice got to Texas, and whether he starts or not doesn't matter. He plays and he's in the game when it matters most, but the effort's contagious, the energy's contagious, the attitude is contagious. There's some similarities there, both, and there's another similarity between those two guys, and you have to have guys like this on teams that win at a high level. Everybody can't be the most highly recruited player. Sir'Jabari Rice had one scholarship offer coming out of high school, New Mexico State, where he went, right? He was not a highly recruited player. Silas Bolden, one Power 5 offer coming out of high school. Oregon State was 5'8", 150, wasn't a highly recruited player. There's they have that chip on their shoulder. I'm going to prove you wrong chip on their shoulder, which is the good chip on your shoulder. There's some similarities between those two guys.
I love it. The other guys that I thought have had a surprising fall camp, Jerry, that I talked about, not only Silas Bolden, but I added Gavin Holmes to that, who we just talked about. Gavin Holmes has certainly been in that category. Juan Davis has solidified himself almost as indispensable, right, Jerry? I think that's another one that's done a really good job of that. And then I thought Trey Moore should be mentioned alongside those guys because Trey, look, we heard some good things about him in the spring, but we really didn't get to see them because he was in and out with a little bit of nicked up injuries at times. He's been healthy all fall camp, to our knowledge. And what we're hearing behind the scenes has been extraordinarily promising, in my opinion. So,
I don't know if I mentioned on here, and we'll see. Look, games have to be played, but I think some NFL scouts that have come through the fall practices, a couple of guys have said Gavin Holmes looks like the most improved player on the defense, and that could be physically, that could be just the way he's attacking it, because he's definitely added muscle physically. But he's gone from a guy that was not on the NFL scouts radar to a guy that is now going to be on the evaluation sheet senior year. So he's made a jump in the scouts' eyes preseason. You still got to go do it in the games.
Yeah, got to remember he's the one that can run.
Yeah,
you could take away a lot of things. Oh, last year he wasn't that physical, and no, he wasn't, and that's why he didn't play as much. But he was always the fastest corner of the group, including Manny Muhammad. And so if he can get that other piece of the puzzle down, Jerry and Blake, all of a sudden he's a different player. He's also the longest corner, in my opinion, in that room. So he's got a little height and length to him. We'll see how it all goes, but excited about his arrival, and not necessarily arrival, but his play this year, because he's a guy that maybe it took a year to get acclimated to Texas. And now that he is, I think he's going to be a real player for the University of Texas.
Jason Burney actually has is Colin Simmons actually 245 pounds? I think 240, 245 based on seeing him in person. And comparative to when he was 222, 224 at the Under Armour game in January before he reported. He definitely looks 15 or so pounds heavier right now. Not heavy in a bad way, developed.
The other guy, Jerry and Blake, that I think is a surprise this fall camp has been Jalen Gilbo. And much like Silas Bolden, guys, it hasn't been all about just the play on the field. It's been that absolute refusal to say no and to be pushed aside. We've all seen people like this in our life, right? Where, despite all odds, despite a 2-year starter returning for a third year that's supposed to be a mid-round draft pick, despite, him having all these despite, and then yet he's still going to see serious time this year, right? I think we saw traces of that maybe in the spring, but we thought that it's only because Jade is kind of out for the spring, nursing an injury. No, that's not true. Jalen Gilbo has kind of fought through that charade or that charade or whatever you want to call it. Facade.
Yeah.
Better word. Sorry. My point being that those are the types of guys that make your team better. And that's the team that's about development as opposed to just bring me the 5 stars and let's roll them out there. These are the types of guys that you need to make a better team.
By the way, yes. And Gilbo, look, I think my years doing this, I've only covered one guy from the Golden Triangle that maybe didn't have that chip on his shoulder toughness factor that so many of those kids have, the kind of those blue collar kids from that area, Southeast Texas. Gilbo definitely has it. Gilbo, he has that. Again, he's positioned really well because he was a ranked guy. He was a 4-star guy, a top 300 prospect in the country, and however you want to define that. But his best friend Bryce Anderson was a top 50 player in the country. There were some other guys in the Houston area, even though they're Golden Triangle, they know those Houston area guys right there at camps. They do college camps, high school camps, whatever. There was a lot of guys ranked ahead of Gilbo. And he's one of those guys that that stuff matters to him. And that helps him excel on the field. So I've always been really big fan of Jalen Gilbo. And here's the thing that I really like. Gilbo didn't get off to the best start at Texas. But instead of hitting the door and leaving, he stayed. And now he's battled through injury. He stayed because there was probably a couple people trying to tell him to get out, but he stayed. And now you see the benefit of that. Same thing with Juan Davis. So while we live in this portal day and age, another guy I'm watching in the future like that is Ryan Niblett. Ryan Niblett could have walked last spring. It would have been easy. They just recruited 3 guys out of the portal, and Ryan Wingo's coming in and looks really good in the spring, and Jonathan DeAndre Moore there. It would have been easy to hit the portal and go to Houston or somewhere. Guaranteed starting spot at Tulane or somewhere like that. Look, he stayed. Obviously, Texas wanted him to stay. And Sark is starting to talk about Ryan Niblett and his development. So these players are extremely important in year-in culture and success and player development.
Love that name. Love Ryan Niblett because he was talked about on Monday by Steve Sarkisian as well as kind of turning a corner into a reliable piece of the puzzle for Texas this year. That was good to hear from Sark and a good comment there from Jerry. All right, before we go further, I want to say thank you to our Wednesday sponsor on Coffee and Football. That's our friend Adam Lowy. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, automobile accident of any kind, including motorcycle or ATV, and you think you might be due compensation, make sure you give Adam and his firm a chance to earn your business and give him a call. It's a free consultation, no strings attached. Reach out to him at loweylawfirm.com. That's loweylawfirm.com. 20-plus years experience in and around the state of Texas as well as the Austin area. Again, loweylawfirm.com. Adam, thank you so much for sponsoring Coffee and Football.
All right. Well, recruiting decision coming today, and then a few more decisions coming down the line. Jerry, what's the latest news there?
Break out the graphic, Blake. Yes, you got some big decisions on the recruiting front. Obviously, Michael Fasusi, somebody in the chat asked what time today, around 3 p.m. Central. Expected to be Oklahoma. Obviously, Texas A&M haven't given up, and I don't even think they'll give up after assuming Fasusi announces for Oklahoma. On the 23rd there, you have Nick Brooks, the other offensive lineman, uncommitted, still on the board. I think Nick Brooks continues to trend for Texas. Obviously, Georgia, USC are the other two of the final three, originally from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I've gone through that before. Cedar Rapids freshman, Alpharetta in Atlanta area sophomore, Cedar Rapids junior, Atlanta area is a senior now. Grayson, one of the most talented schools of many most talented schools in the Atlanta area. But Nick Brooks, I think there's still some real positivity on the Texas side there. We'll see what he does on Friday. Then you have its defensive backs day on Saturday. Jonah Williams, I believe, will be Texas or LSU on Saturday. And again, not a recruitment anybody's going to give up on, no matter which way that goes. But I think there's look, is he going to be the first person from his family to commit to an out-of-state school? We'll see Saturday. Aiden Anning, I think LSU there is probably – there's a lot of push in the Ruston area around the school to LSU. Arkansas has probably done the best job recruiting him. Texas, obviously, Joseph Blake Gideon, the area recruiter, they've given it their best shot, got him and his family on campus twice. I think even if that's another recruitment that will continue to go, even if he commits to a Arkansas or Texas, definitely, even if he commits to LSU, which is kind of, I just think the push in that some people close to him might push LSU over the top there. Even if he commits to LSU, that's a kid that, Sark doesn't back off the guys they really like. Jamie French, August 30th. Texas, I still think has the best relationship there. I think Miami's emerged as the competition, which they should be if there was no in-state competition for a Texas on Jamie French. That would be a bad look for the in-state schools. I think Miami is the school that's given Texas the run there. Obviously, Tennessee has got him on campus a number of times and has been a factor in that recruitment. LSU's got a lot of family in Baton Rouge. I don't think LSU will be the pick, maybe for some of the same reasons that the Corian Moore went to Oregon. Guys, sometimes, a lot of family in an area is not exactly what an 18-year-old wants all the time. Then you have Michael Terry, to be determined. Could be September, could be October, a few weeks into the season. Think Texas is in a pretty good spot there. Oregon, Will Stein's done a really good job for the Ducks. Nebraska, Matt Rule's done a good job for Nebraska. But I think Michael Terry, that close to home, I think could be a factor there at the end. Madden Framo, wild card, I think slightly lean Notre Dame. Johnny Nanson's done a really good job. Longer it plays out, better shot for Texas. If he gets back, Texas getting back on campus for a game, he goes to Notre Dame, goes to USC, kind of takes it all in, gets a chance to see Johnny Nansen coach the linebackers at Texas. What effect will he have on the scheme at Texas this year, which I think will be quite a bit. That adds to Johnny Nansen's recruiting pitch for Madden Framo and the family once they see Johnny Nansen's body of work at Texas. We'll see how long that recruitment plays out. I still think Notre Dame's the team to beat. They've been the leader for a long time, but Texas has made it a much more difficult recruitment for the Fighting Irish, and we'll see what happens with in-season visits.
Good stuff.
On recruiting, I want to bring this one up. Scott Knutson, we've had a few questions, and I just want to keep updating people because Vince Young's son has now made his way into the social media world because VY posted a photo of him playing quarterback. He's a freshman at Kincaid. What I can tell you about Young, VY's son, is I have not seen him on a football field. He's a freshman. I have seen him on a basketball court. I was at TJ Ford Academy one day, not this summer before, and VY was there, and it's because his son works out with TJ, and TJ sometimes because his son plays point guard. Really skilled athlete, as you would think. How big is he going to get? Well, I mean, that's going to be determined, but also a really talented basketball player, plays for one of the higher level AAU teams in the Houston area.
All right, guys. Well, I need to tell everybody out there about HelloFresh. And with HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. You can skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. We all know that home-cooked meals are so much better for you, but you don't always have time to pull it off. But with HelloFresh handling all the meal planning, all the shopping, and most of the prep, it's easier than ever to get dinner on the table quick and painless. And that's what makes it great. It's quick and easy. School is in full swing. I got kids playing football, so my boys and I use HelloFresh because we simply don't have a lot of time. and their menu is always changing. You don't get tired of eating the same thing because there's over 50 recipes to choose from every week. And here's the best part. HelloFresh is going to hook y'all up with free breakfast for life. All you have to do, just go to HelloFresh.com/freeontexas. You'll receive one free breakfast item per box while your subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life just by going to HelloFresh.com/freeontexas. And that's HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. All right, Bobby, we have a guest. I'm going to let you intro him, and I'll bring him in.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike Bratton of That SEC podcast is joining us. We met Mike, I guess, almost a month ago now, Jerry, you and I, at the SEC Media Days. Mike has a very popular podcast and YouTube channel called That SEC Podcast. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. And you ain't lying about coffee and football. I think this is the earliest video interview I've ever done.
So does that mean you're never coming on again, or you're up for it?
Yeah, we'll see how this one goes. I'll let you know.
You can take down that 12th man flag anytime you want in the background there. Hey, we'll get you a Longhorn flag. It'll be all good. Hey, seriously, Mike, appreciate you joining us very much. I want to talk a little SEC football. Longhorns joining the SEC along with Oklahoma. Big week of games coming up in the very first weekend. We know that most of the games are kind of cake. Clemson, Georgia, though, and A&M, Notre Dame appear to be two big ones. What are your thoughts on those two games as we look to this first of the season?
Yeah, well, I really think that, as is always the case, Notre Dame is wildly overrated. I'm seeing they're already in the top 10. I have no idea where people are getting that from. That usually lasts about 2 weeks, and then reality smacks them right in the face. But Mike Elko first game, I'm not guaranteeing a win or anything, but having the game in College Station, I think the Aggies are going to have a massive advantage on the line of scrimmage with their defensive line going against Notre Dame's offensive line. So I think points could be at a premium in that football game. And I think it sets up really well if Texas A&M can win it to get that hype train going, which I think Mike Elko is doing everything in his power to have that that hype train not get it going, because we all know the Aggies too. I mean, everything I just said about Notre Dame, you can apply to them as well. Overhyped, never deliver. So maybe right out the gate delivering. I don't know if that'll be a good thing for that program or not, but I'm fascinated to see it. And then I apologize. The other game you said Miami and Florida.
Yep.
Clemson, Georgia. Yeah, I mean, that's another one where strength on strength right there. Clemson's defensive front, Georgia's offensive front. That's going to be a game within the game to really keep your eye on, because I think Clemson could really be even at an advantage. And Clemson, or excuse me, and Georgia may have, a top 3, top 5 offensive line in the country. But I think Clemson's front seven is that good. Now, the rest, I think Georgia's going to be at a massive advantage. And I really anticipate Kirby always has his teams ready to play right out the gate. I think they'll kill Clemson. I really do.
Well, yeah. Kirby had the classic setup late last week. He came out and said, we're stinking it up and blah, blah, blah. The old John Calipari stuff, trying to make it, because his guys have been told how good they are the whole offseason. So now he's trying to make it Georgia against the world this year, right? That, you guys, you're terrible in practice. We got to get it going. Everybody has you number one, blah, blah, blah. He's using the John Calipari tactic. Hey, Mike, you mentioned Miami, Florida. This is if Florida loses that game, baby, its hot seat is on fire, hotter than the brush fire in August, right? And Miami's actually favored in that game, which is interesting to me. The loser will take heat from the fan base in that one.
Oh, no doubt. But good news for Florida fans. I do love to troll them online, but I think Mario Cristobal is such an idiot. He makes Billy Napier look like Albert Einstein. So I think Florida will be at a massive advantage in this football game when it comes to coaching. And I'm not even the biggest fan of Billy Napier. I just think this is going to be his best team yet. The home crowd, I think, will be insane for that football game because everything you just said. I think a lot of people are sleeping on Florida. It's popular to kick them right now, and I agree everything you just said. If they drop this one, particularly if they lose 2 weeks later when they host A&M. That's game 3 for Mike Elko. It's year 3 for Billy Napier. If he loses both those games, they should just fire him immediately. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Florida wins both of those games, and I think Florida is probably one of the biggest surprises in the SEC. I think they'll probably start something like 6-1. Now you look at the back half of their schedule; they may finish 6-6, but considering their over/under is 4.5, I think you have to take that if you're a Florida fan.
You mentioned that in the over and under. I think Texas is 10.5 this year by some odds makers. What do you think of the Longhorns going into their first year in the SEC, Mike?
Yeah, that's my favorite under on the board. I know that's not going to be popular with your audience, but just that SEC grind. I'm sure they're tired of hearing it. Everybody, quite honestly, I'm tired of talking about it. I want to see it play out on the field, but it is real. And I'm talking teams on the back half of your schedule, like Florida, like Kentucky, like Arkansas. Yeah, 9 times out of 10, is Texas going to win that game regardless of where it is? Probably. But can they do it when it's back to back to back and it's a back half of an SEC schedule? That remains to be seen. And I'm not sold that they can do it. So give me under for Texas. I'm not saying they're going to be terrible, but hell, if you go 10-2, you're still under. So I think 9-3, 10-2 is a realistic record for Texas, but I would lean heavily under their first season in the SEC.
All right, we got Mike here, Mike Bratton of That SEC Podcast. We all actually, me and Jerry, I don't know if Blake's given his number yet either, but Jerry and I are at 10-2 as well. So that's not like some major issue with us. I think 10-2 still gets them in the college football playoff, though.
Oh yeah, no doubt. But the only issue is, and this I don't think will be an issue for Texas, but it could be an issue for some others. There's a good shot that there's many 10-2 teams in the SEC.
Like how many? That's a good point. So who else?
Certainly,
Ole Miss,
Georgia, Missouri is another
Missouri's
one.
Got a great schedule to win 10 games.
Alabama, you got to consider obviously with Kalen DeBoer. I think Tennessee and even A&M. So and maybe even LSU. So I'm telling you, there's a lot of teams that could. They obviously can't all do it. But interestingly enough, I didn't come up with this. Someone shared this with me, and I've seen it make the rounds over the last month or so. There is a scenario where the SEC, this is possible, believe it or not, 9 teams can go 10-2, and the math checks out. Now, will 9 teams go 10-2? Of course not. But I really do think 5, 6 could. But back to what I was saying, it's not going to kill Texas. Who it's going to kill? If you've seen Missouri's schedule, it's going to kill Missouri.
No doubt.
It's going to kill Ole Miss because their schedule's a joke. And each of those teams have about 3 difficult games. And if they lose 2 of them, then I don't think they're making the college football playoff.
Got it. Hey, Mike, just a minute ago, you talked about our friend Billy Napier being on fire, possibly Mario Cristobal going out. This is something we talked about yesterday with folks. The first head coach fired list. I don't know if you saw this or not. Billy Napier leading the way, followed by Sam Pittman at Arkansas, followed by Mario Cristobal. So there's the 3 guys that you talked about. Can you talk a little bit? I want to ask you this because one team that Texas fans don't know enough about right now, and he's not on this list, is Kentucky. Is that a team that Texas needs to worry about at all? We've called it a trap game of sorts because it sits right before Texas goes to College Station near the end of the year. What does that game look like to you as someone that probably knows Kentucky a hell of a lot better than me and Jerry?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that because I was going to bring up the fact you bring up these coaching firing odds. There's one name that's not there that I think could find himself there before the end of the season, and it's Mark Stoops at Kentucky. There was all that, he tried to get the A&M job, and depending on who you believe, A&M pulled out. He says he pulled out in the middle of the night. Yeah, right.
On a plane going to College Station, by the way. That's not when somebody pulls out of a job.
So there is a critical game on South Carolina and Kentucky's schedule. It's going to be the first SEC on ABC, their new deal. Week 2, South Carolina at Kentucky. South Carolina's won 2 in a row over Kentucky, which prior to that, Kentucky won about 5 or 6 in a row. But my prediction is whoever loses that game, South Carolina at Kentucky, their coach is going to be fired by the end of the season. Now, I would favor Kentucky to win that game. You asked me about them. They may have a top probably 5 defense in the SEC. Their defense is really good. Their coordinator, Brad White, he's one of the best defensive minds in the entire SEC. They've added a transfer linebacker from Georgia in Jamon Dumas Johnson. He is really good. He started the last couple of years at Georgia. They got an interior defensive lineman, Deion Walker. I think he's the best interior defensive lineman in the entire SEC, maybe the country. But the problem for Kentucky is, and Mark Stoops specifically, he can't hire an offensive coordinator. It's year after year. I think this is like his 6th offensive coordinator in about 7 seasons. And I'm not a big fan of Bush Hampton, the guy they just hired. Another issue at Kentucky, they can't develop a quarterback. Going back since, I believe it's 2015, they have started a transfer at quarterback every single game since 2015. And they're doing it again with Brock Vandagriff, who I'm not really sold on the hype. They keep telling people, well, he was a 5-star in high school. That's fine. He barely played at Georgia, and there's I know Georgia's loaded, so maybe that's unfair to him. But I don't think he's all that good. Now, if the offense clicks and Brock Vandagriff is this 5-star, then Kentucky's going to be one hell of a dangerous team. But I don't know. I'm not buying it. We have to see what this offense looks like. But if it is a good offense, yeah, certainly. I think that's a game that could trip up Texas.
And by the way, to the point on Kentucky and Vandagriff, not only that, they took Gavin Wimsatt out of the portal from Rutgers. So you took a second portal quarterback. You don't normally do that if you're completely sold on your first portal quarterback.
Right. And word out of Lexington is they plan on using Wimsatt. Now, is he competing with Brock Vandagriff? I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but I think they're just going to get really creative, and they're going to use him more as a situational, like wildcat type quarterback. But again, to your point, I mean, if you're having to do that, I thought Brock Vandagriff was this extreme athlete, so maybe they just don't want to get him hurt. I don't know the story there, but everything that I'm being told up there, they're going to use both those guys this year.
9 times out of 10, if you have 2 quarterbacks, it means you don't have one. That's just a rule of thumb in football. It can be an exception, right? There can be exceptions. Appreciate that explanation. So, Mike, this is the first time we've had you on this podcast. We hope to have you on again. We appreciate you coming on this early in the morning, although I got to be honest, it's not all that early. You got to get yourself some coffee, buddy. Got to ask you this. Who's your pick to win the SEC? And how do you think that's going to come out this year?
Yeah, I think, it's kind of the obvious, but it's Georgia. And I think it's going to remain Georgia as long as Kirby Smart's there, quite honestly. I do have questions, and because they've won 2 national championships, I guess we just have to anoint Kirby Smart as like the greatest coach in college football. This might be a little hot take-ish. I don't even know if he's that good of a coach. I mean, he is, but is he like far and away the best coach in the country? I don't buy that. I think he's far and away the best recruiter. Recruiting wins more than anything else in college football. I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know, but when you have to beat TCU in a national championship, when you beat Alabama once out of 6 times and they're down all their skill talent, again, credit to Georgia. That's good and well, but it is comical going back to how we started this thing. Kirby complaining about depth and the sport and all this. There's not a damn coach out there that would trade his roster right now for what Kirby Smart's assembled in Athens, Georgia. So, Georgia's still the pick, but I'm not quite sold that it's Georgia and everybody else. I think the gap there is quite small, to be honest with you, and these things happen quickly. I mean, Georgia probably should have won 3 out of 3 national championships. I think had they made the playoff, they would have won it last year, but they have taken a step back on the defensive side of the football, particularly on the defensive line. And I don't think they have any of those elite guys still on this roster. And that was really their edge, the years they did win it. They were just they had so many monsters on that defensive line. They don't have it now. And Carson Beck is really, really good, but I don't know if he's quite as good as some of these people are billing him up to be. So it's going to be a really fun season. And just the fact that there's no more divisions. We got Texas and Oklahoma coming into the conference. I mean, it's going to be insane. I'm going to love every second of it.
Mike, thank you so much, bud. Appreciate you coming on. Check out Mike's podcast, That SEC Podcast. It's available on podcast form as well as here on YouTube as well if you're watching on YouTube. Mike, you have a good one, bud. And I'm going to show you something, okay? You got to say hook 'em.
All right, hook 'em.
Take care, Mike. Have a good one, buddy. Good stuff this morning, guys. Good stuff.
Okay, y'all. Well, yesterday, the basketball schedule, SEC basketball schedule came out for Texas. Jerry, I was hoping to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, look, this is a doozy, man. I mean, Texas got a pretty favorable SEC football schedule year one. SEC in basketball is going to be underrated for the casual fans, I think, with the move of Texas to the SEC. But this schedule's a doozy now. There are 11 teams on this schedule in the top 40 of Bart Torvik's rankings heading into the preseason. 11 games on this schedule out of 18 in the SEC. I mean, your first 5 games right out of the gate for Texas are really difficult. You're at A&M, who's going to be a tournament team, top 6-7 seed team once again under Buzz Williams there. Then you have Auburn, obviously Bruce Pearl, top 10 ranked team. Then you have Uncle Rick Barnes coming back to town on January 11th with another top 6 NCAA seed level team. Then you go to Oklahoma, which talent-wise are they where these first 3 games are? No, Porter Moser, really good coach at Oklahoma. So you play at your 2 rivals within 10 days. Then you go to Florida. Golden's doing a really good job. NCAA tournament team will be again. By the way, I have a 7'9" freshman. If you see somebody that looks taller than anybody you've ever seen in your life, if you tune into that game. But this is a tough schedule for Texas basketball. At Ole Miss, January 28th or 29th. That should be a fun one, right, for Texas fans? Then later on in the schedule, the same week of February, Nate Oates, Alabama, Kentucky come to town. So Moody Center will be sold out for a couple of games in a row. And then you look at the schedule at South Carolina, like, oh, man, got a breather after Alabama and Kentucky. South Carolina won the SEC tournament last year. I don't think they'll be quite as good this year. But you get Arkansas twice, Calipari on the road and at home. Georgia's an improved team. Mississippi State on the road. They're expected to be maybe NCAA tournament team this year. This is a incredibly tough schedule for Texas. This schedule on paper actually is more difficult than last year's Big 12 schedule. Now, the Big 12 was a little down last year, but the SEC has a bunch of long-limbed athletes and some highly skilled basketball players. SEC basketball is going to be a real challenge for Rodney Terry and the staff. It's going to be fun for the fans. And I'll say this, welcome to the SEC, Rodney Terry and staff. This is a real tough schedule they have for their first year in conference play.
Okay, and then next on the list of things to talk about, excuse me, guys, this morning, ESPN came out with actually, before we get to that, I'm sorry, Jerry, tell folks out there about Manscaped. Sorry to put you on the spot like that.
Well, you don't put me on the Blake, you're not putting me on the spot because the 5.0 is always somewhere close to me. I take care of my business. Fellas, do you want your grooming routine to be a one-and-done deal? Well, the days of using the same trimmer for your face and your private parts are over thanks to our friends at Manscaped. They've come up with the ultimate package to keep your hairs trimmed from 12 to 6, introducing the Beard and Balls bundle featuring the Lawnmower 5.0. There it is, the sound. And the Beard Hedger, a trimmer for the moneymaker, and another for the boys downstairs. Get 20% off plus free shipping with code ONTEXAS, all caps, at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with code ONTEXAS at manscaped.com. For the premium grooming experience, trust Manscaped. And I said this yesterday, and I'm going to say it again. This is a waterproof product. I've tried it. I'm just reading the ad here, okay? Just like the lawnmower, the Beard Hedger is also waterproof. so you can handle your beard grooming in the sink or in the shower without worrying about water damage. With up to 60 minutes of runtime and an LED charge indicator, you'll never be caught mid-trim with a dead battery, because there's nothing worse than that. On Texas, all caps, manscaped.com.
Thank you, as always, Jerry. Now then, ESPN came out with their first mock draft for the NFL 2025 draft. And guys, 2 Longhorns in the top 10, including number 3 overall, Kelvin Banks. They have him going to the Broncos, and then Quinn Ewers going to the Raiders at number 8. And then last but not least, in the first round, wide receiver Isaiah Bond going to the Eagles. How big would this be for the Longhorns to have 2 top 10 picks?
Massive.
I think it's massive. I also think it's massive if Kelvin Banks goes that high. If I'm not mistaken, Jerry, they originally had him on their first list at 5, so he's moved up a little. They also had Quinn Ewers at 10, so he's moved up a little. Isaiah Bond was at 25, so he's moved down a little, if you track that sort of thing. Jerry, you talk about it. You were talking about, quote unquote, identifiable players at the University of Texas and how that becomes valuable in a recruiting setting. Explain a little bit how those high draft picks actually translate into recruiting wins, because look, they had Byron Murphy and Xavier Worthy last year. They had 11 picks overall. That hasn't necessarily completely translated, but maybe it has to be consecutive. And then some of these guys are in the league and doing things on Sundays, and people start taking more and more notice.
Yeah, I think it has to be sustained a little bit within your program of success, and then those guys when they go to the pros, right? I mean, Xavier Worthy is in a great position to be a key guy for Texas for the next 5, 6, 8 years, because he's going to be catching passes from a top 3 quarterback of all time, a guy who may arguably be the best of all time. We'll see. I'm not saying that. That has to be proven out by these guys. But this stuff matters when you have guys drafted year after year, and then you have guys that are successful in the NFL. They really become identifiable players for you, especially. But here's the thing: once they go to the NFL, especially when they come back. People can say what they want, but Kevin Durant's always come back to Texas. He may have only gone to Texas 1 year. He may never graduate from Texas, but he comes back to Texas multiple times every year. He's a big Texas advocate. So those things all matter in recruiting. And when you look at this too, is Isaiah Bond's an interesting one, guys, for me, the season he has, where he could go in the draft. Because last year, A.D. Mitchell left Georgia and came to Texas, and ends up having his best season in college football and ends up going in the second round of the NFL draft. Isaiah Bond leaves Alabama off a national semifinal team. He's now at Texas. He's going to put up numbers. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that. But if he ends up being a late first, second round pick, that's 2 transfers in a row at the wide receiver position from powerhouse SEC programs that have come to Texas and elevated their stock a little bit and been drafted players. So we think about it in high school recruiting, but nowadays I think you got to think about it in high school and portal recruiting. When Texas starts having success from the portal ranks, guys getting drafted and having pro careers, I think that's big as well. One of the interesting things about that list, guys, is the mock drafts are like early high school rankings. 40 to 50% of those guys in these first round mock drafts will not be first rounders come April next year. Byron Murphy was not on that board. Savondre Sweat was not on that second round board headed into last year. The guy this year for me is Cameron Williams. That's not on this board right now, but he will be by the end of the season. He's had a really good fall. And he's got all the NFL size and measurables and talent.
Hey, Jerry, I'm going to put another one on your list just in case. What about Amari Niblack? I mean, other than Colston Loveland at Michigan, is there a number 2 tight end in the country right now that could go up that high? I mean, seriously, I mean, he's as talented as any of them. I just don't know if he blocks in line well enough.
Right.
But
he doesn't fit the NFL game on some level.
I'm just saying. He it's not like Travis Kelce is a great inline blocker or Brock Bowers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just a guy to keep your eye on. And I agree with you on Cam Williams, first of all, because I think he fits all the height, weight, upside kind of things that could get him into that early round. But Niblack might be a guy too. Just put that out there.
Yeah.
Well, it is time to jump over to some super chats and some questions. And we're going to start here with Jerry's Jack Links. Thank you, as always. He says, I'm having trouble thinking of a good number 10 as we're 10 days away, but I'm sure there's a good walk-on or something.
Hey, guys, we mentioned Marty Akins earlier. I think I'm right about this. I think he went the Wildcats, if I'm not mistaken. Is that Gregory Portland? Is that where he went to high school?
That's exactly where it was. Good job. Because I couldn't place the high school after his name popped up. It was Gregory Portland. Yeah.
Yeah. His dad, I think, was a high school coach there. A really good one for a long time.
Yeah, I had to do some digging to find
out. Obviously, if you missed the start of it, we had Vince Young and we had Peter Gardere. Still the only quarterback to win 4 against the Sooners is Peter Gardere.
Hey, by the way, the Akins family brought Sergio Garcia into being a Texas Longhorn fan for life, by the way. So,
yeah, the daughter married Sergio, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure the Texas can claim the green jacket, but Sergio might let him.
And then we have a super chat from UT Boy, who I think said he had to leave, but thank you, UT Boy. He says number 10 and 3, Quincent Young. So appreciate the super chat. And then one here from Longhorn Nation. Thank you, Longhorn Nation. I wish Bijan, Roshan, and Overshone would have got to experience last year's success. How big was How big were those 3 for Texas building the right culture under Sark?
Boy, I think Roshan was as good as Bijan was, and as exciting as Overshone could be at times. Roshan is the one that I like, and I don't want to say this because I don't want to limit Bijan because he's just such a good guy and a good role model, and is going to have all the success in the world in the NFL. It looks like Roshan was the backbone, man. You don't start building a team really unless you have a backbone to build it around. And guys like him, and I'm not saying Overshone or Bijan weren't good teammates. That's not my point. But man, those are the guys you build it around because you can rely on them. You know what kind of effort they give each and every day. You know how much they care about football and their team. Look, I love Bijan. I love DeMarvion, but man, Roshan was just he's a guy that I think helped. When you look back at it, I think that Bijan will be the flash that people remember as far as ability. But if you don't remember Roshan as the backbone of that, I disagree with you. That's my personal opinion.
You know what I've kind of compared those guys to, but they just weren't at Texas at the right time because football is a different sport than basketball. TJ Ford and Royale Ivy.
Oh, that's a good one. That's really, really good.
Because look, TJ Ford was a Naismith Player of the Year. I mean, he was the guy. Royale Ivy was very similar to Roshan. He was a minor role player in the NBA. Obviously, Roshan will be a better player in the NFL than Royale was in the NBA. But at the college level, Royale brought a toughness and expectations on an everyday basis to Texas basketball when Rick Barnes and Rob Lanier recruited them in. That was big in building the foundation of that program. And Roshan, statistically, he'll never be remembered. He wasn't on the best teams. But I'm here to tell you that he was there when Sark took over. Having a guy like Roshan there was really big in the day-to-day building of a foundation that Steve Sarkisian wanted. Unbelievable leader. We'll never see a guy that was the leader of a team that was a number 2 running back that wasn't even the starting runner. I'll never see that in my lifetime again. I don't think.
I want to say this. You're talking, you know what? I said backbone. The general term for this in sports is the glue guy. The guy that has all the connective tissue to the other parts of the team, and everybody has some some kind of connection to that person somehow, some way, and they all kind of follow along. Like Royale Ivy, for example, knew he wasn't TJ Ford. Roshan Johnson knew he wasn't Bijan Robinson. It doesn't mean that he couldn't be the best Royale Ivy or Roshan Johnson they can be and still make a hell of a difference.
Those guys were going to maximize every single ounce of what they had. No matter what, come hell or high water, they were going to will themselves to have a career in their sport. Royale Ivy's a few years away from being an NBA head coach now, by the way. But those guys were so similar. They were just at Texas in different times. The basketball program was on the way up already, and TJ came in and they go to a Final Four because in basketball, a special guy like that, if you already have a good nucleus, can carry you. That plays point guard, obviously. Roshan, so similar to Royale, knowing both of them, so similar.
All right. Hey, I need to say this real quick. Tomorrow at 5:30, I'll be speaking at the Dallas, Texas X's along with Alex Okafor. I think Fozzie may be there as well. They're going to have a little autograph signing thing for some ex-players. Come out to the Dallas, Texas X's event at 5:30 downtown Dallas, or at least near downtown, at an event venue called The Happiest Hour. All proceeds go to support scholarship funds for UT students in the Dallas area. So if you're out there and want to come out and have a little fun on Thursday afternoon, please do so. Email bash@dallastexasx's.org. That's bash@dallastexasx's.org. Put OTF in the headline. You'll get a free ticket to Thursday's event. I think they had 10 free tickets, and as of last night, they had given away 7. So be one of the first 3 today, and you'll get a free ticket to do that. Also, Jerry and I will be down in Houston at an event next Thursday night at Little Woodrow's from 6 to 8 p.m. Please come join us there. It'll be sponsored by Yingling Flight Beer, the low carb answer for Yingling Brewing, as well as Little Woodrow's. That'll be sponsored by not only Yingling, but also Faust Distributing. That's next Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. at Little Woodrow's in Webster.
Hey, Blake, I want to bring up Jay Lee's question. He's asked it a couple times, and I want to answer it because it's a really good one. Jerry has that Antonio Coleman, D lineman, Saraland, teammate of KJ Lacey that visited Texas late July, who flipped from Bama to Auburn to Bama to Auburn, flipped the most times you've ever seen. Or can you think of anyone who's flipped more? More times than that, I don't think so. He's got some special circumstances because Saban retired, and there were a lot of things going on within that state in recruiting and within his recruitment. Now, Jordan Elliott ended up committing to 3 or 4 schools, but it wasn't flips back and forth. I can't think of anybody who's done that. Now, we do have to consider that Saban retired. That could affect that a little bit. And I think around the program, they thought that might happen. Before it actually became public. But no, I've never seen anybody go from school to school to school to school. The best story, especially rivals like that, the best story, though, was Reuben Foster, the linebacker, who was committed to Auburn and ended up signing with Alabama and had the Auburn tattoo. And I'm not sure if he ever played a game at Alabama with the Auburn tattoo. I'm guessing he didn't. But when he flipped from Auburn to Alabama, he had the Auburn tattoo. And I just remember that because we had him in the Under Armour game back at the time.
Hey, I got to say this. I've got to add this one, Jerry. Don't forget about Jacob Hester, who was at one time committed to Texas out of Shreveport Evangel. He put a Longhorn tattoo on his leg and then ended up signing with LSU. We saw him at SEC Media Days as well. He's doing a radio show down in Baton Rouge these days with, I can't remember the guy's name, Jim Bob Hebert, the former center, or T-Bob Hebert, the former center for the LSU Tigers as well. So Jacob Hester had a tattoo that was a Longhorn and ended up not a Longhorn. That's similar to Reuben Foster.
Champ Bailey 3 brings up an interesting Brew McCoy because he actually did the decommit, sign, showed up for a few days left, and transferred right again. So that one's definitely a little different. Oh yeah, here's Zane Petty. This is a funny topic. That cake in the shape of Texas that Harbaugh cooked for Jordan Elliott was legendary. Blake, I don't know if you have time to bring that up, but that picture was hilarious. The cake that I don't know what it looked like, but it didn't look like Texas.
It looked like Texas without an entire lower part of Southwest Texas.
What it did is, now thinking back on it, it looked like a guy that was going to get a 4-year show cause.
Found it. Hang on. Bear with me here.
If people haven't seen this cake,
oh,
there we go. Where's El Paso?
I mean, that is wild.
Canyon in all those places. Look, hey, half of Amarillo is somewhere else. I don't know. All those towns up there, Perryton. Is that even up there anymore in that
look, Tampa got pushed into Oklahoma on that cake.
Hey, I think Monterrey, Mexico's in that picture too.
I wonder if that was Connor Stallion's first assignment. Was he the cake maker before? I think we have a Michigan fan in the chat. Was Stallions the cake maker and got fired from that, so they made him the scout?
Man,
that is. Have you ever seen anything worse than that? I mean, dude, I can't bake to save my life, but I definitely wouldn't bake a cake and then put that out there and give it to somebody.
The other thing is, by the way, aren't there 19 candles for his 18th birthday? Or am I counting wrong? Is one of them a cigarette? I swear I see 19 candles. Am I wrong?
Who has it better than us? Nobody. That's the old Harbaugh refrain.
Hey, Bobby. Hey, Jenny on the chat. She needs to make a cake of a Michigan and leave out Detroit and have it here before the week of the game or something. We need to return the favor. Jenny, make a cake of Michigan. Put in part of Wisconsin or something.
That is, I have no words.
Okay, Ashley thinks she counted 20 candles.
Lance says he counted 21. So there you go. Oh man. All right. Well, Jerry, I know you're not at a loss for words about Gooder, so why don't you flip them glasses on?
I'm not, but man, guys, I messed up. I don't have my Gooders on me today. They're in the car because it was only 180 degrees in Houston yesterday driving around. They got sunburn. But look, Gooder, I'll fake like I'm putting them on. They launched the new product, the Retro G. Go check them out. New vintage inspired shades. As always, they don't slip or bounce. You'll see me do it every day. The Retro G's are available in 4 colors. The favorite name of the bunch is Threaten Me with a Good Time. Sounds like UT boy going fishing every morning, catching that 12-pound bass. These stylish sunnies are only $25 a pair. Again, no slip, no bounce, all polarized, and all fun. 1-year warranty. 30-day money free free returns. You don't need that. You can just throw that one away. When will you be using your Gooders this summer? Let's talk about it. Vacation, cycling, Bevo Boulevard next weekend, DKR on the 31st. Ann Arbor, Bobby will be wearing his September 7th. Looking at Michigan play Texas. If you want to support the show and try a pair, Gooder is giving On Texas, all caps, listeners free shipping. You can go to gooder.com, On Texas, all caps, and use code On Texas for free shipping. Gooder offers a 30-day money-back guarantee and 100% satisfaction. Again, gooder.com, On Texas, use code On Texas for free shipping.
Hey, Jerry, you're not lying about needing those sunglasses for the Michigan game because it's a maze out for that game. Which means all the Michigan fans are going to be wearing yellow at the midday. The sun's going to be blaring down probably. Make sure you bring sunglasses to that game if you actually want to see the action. Would be my suggestion to everyone.
We're going to jump back into super chats. This one here from Jason. Thank you, Jason. He says, Jerry went down the list of all the top targets, and we maybe lead with 1 to 2. A month ago, we led for more. It's hard to act like this year's class isn't disappointing. A top 10 class would be a failure, in my opinion.
Well, Texas was ranked about 18 this time last year, or 14. So it's not dissimilar. Now, Sark closed on Ryan Wingo, Brandon Baker, Kobe Black. They lost out on Wardell Mack, later flipped him. Phil Simi and Aaron Butler didn't have offers. They got those guys. Ty Anthony Smith flipped from the coaching carousel, and Texas ended up with a third straight top 5 class. I expect similar this year as of right now. The crazy thing about recruiting rankings, though, and again, I always separate it. There's recruiting rankings, which do matter because you're assembling enough talent in your program on a year in, year out basis, and you're stringing together highly ranked classes. But then are you filling your needs? But that's where it's great to be a blue blood in the portal, except you can't always fill those needs with the level of players you want, ideally. But Texas, look, the reality for Texas is they're sitting right now, the 13th ranked class. If they went out for Nick Brooks Friday, I'm not saying they are, if they went out for Jonah Williams, then the next day, they're suddenly the 7th ranked class in the country. If Jamie French goes their way on August 30th, they're suddenly number 6 ranked class in the country. If Michael Terry were to go their way in Sark's way, early September, and when I say they, I mean the staff, then you're suddenly ranked 4 or 5 class in the country. Now, you wouldn't be, because Georgia's going to kick a couple of 5-star D linemen, and they're going to vault up, even if you passed them for a couple of days. But the reality is then, if Texas is sitting there at 19 or 20 commitments before October, and with the 7th or 8th ranked class, whatever it may be, if they get 3 of those 4 guys, the pieces they'll add to the class, as Sark's shown he does, one way or the other, whether that's flipping a guy committed, staying on your 1A targets, finding a couple of guys you offer that are really good players, coaching carousel, which that's going to be different this year because signing day is December 4th through 6th. But Sark is positioned about where they have been. That's the crazy thing. It's not dissimilar to where they've been in past classes. I think the different part now is Texas went 12-2, and you have more talented guys, more highly ranked guys that are visiting. But if you said at the end of the day, if you brought in 52 guys for official visits, and you signed 23 of those guys at the end of the day, and the majority of those were national recruitments, you still put together a really good class. I do think it's a little bit more of a winding road than maybe even I expected, Bobby, at this point right now. But the thing about Sark and their recruiting classes, he tends to get there at the end of the day. That doesn't mean they're going to fill all their needs, though, and that's the key.
And then our next super chat, guys, comes from Jack. Thank you, Jack, as always. He says, Bobby, great interview. Please keep bringing these SEC opinion people on. I love hearing all the different views.
Yeah, we do too. I actually texted with Mike right after that and said, thank you. We would love to have you back. And he said, absolutely. So we'll have him on again. He's a good guy. He works hard, and he's not afraid to share his opinion, by the way. I thought it was very interesting what he said about Mario Cristobal.
Well, look, I mean,
Mario Cristobal may very well be, and I don't mean to say, I actually think he's a decent coach and all that.
Same.
But he may be a meathead. I mean, that just may be who he is.
His problem is, Mario's problem is he has to win big this year to keep it. And look, I know only 5,000 people show up at most of their games, but they do have a fan base. They just like to gripe from South Beach and yachts. But when you don't take a knee and you lose a game the way he did last year, you lose half your fan base to start. So what are you going to do to get him back? That's the key. The way he gets them back is beating Florida in the start of the season. If he loses to Billy Napier, who most Miami fans think is terrible and is going to be fired, whether they're right or not, then again, Mario's fighting an uphill battle because the way he lost the game, the Georgia Tech last year, and then you lose to Billy Napier, most people think is going to get fired, whether they're right or not. Then, he's put himself behind the 8 ball after that debacle last year. But I think he's a good coach, hard-headed, maybe, but most of them are.
It wasn't his first time to lose a game because he refused to
right.
the ball. That's what just boggles my mind. Talk about losing your he had done it once before at Oregon. Talk about losing your audience or your fan base. Kevin Steele at Baylor in his career had a similar situation early on, and he never got off the ground at Baylor.
That was brutal.
They lost a game going into score. They were already leading, and he just wanted to go score one more time from the 5-yard line, and a Baylor running back dropped the ball, and UNLV returned it 95 yards for a touchdown. That can change. That can absolutely change the trajectory of teams.
You want to hear a crazy story about that, Bobby? DJ Lagway, the quarterback, obviously from Willis, who's now at Florida. I was up at a Willis game last year, and I was talking to his father, Derek Lagway, obviously was a star running back at Willis. You covered him, Bobby, and ranked him. He was the fullback on that play. Oh. And he said in the huddle, they all just looked at each other and said, "What?" That was the first game for Kevin Steele at Baylor. They had the game won. He wanted to punch it in and send a message. The ball popped out and returned 99 yards for a fumble return loss in Waco in your first game, in a game you should have won, taken a knee and celebrated. Wild that I actually met somebody that was in that play last year.
That's crazy.
The bad memories.
Derek was a good player, by the way.
Yes.
Back in the day.
Well, before we move on to these last few questions and then get out of here, Bobby, can you tell everybody about Adam Lowy?
Yeah, I can. Absolutely. Adam is a law firm. Adam runs a law firm called Lowy Law Firm that helps injured Texans that have been injured to car wreck, truck wreck, 18-wheeler, et cetera, any kind of motorcycle or ATV accident, et cetera. Give him a call at loweylawfirm.com. Reach out. They will give you a free consultation, no strings attached, free consultation if you've been injured in an automobile accident of any kind, to see if you're due any sort of compensation. Again, loweylawfirm.com. We appreciate Adam and his firm sponsoring Coffee and Football for us.
Hey, Blake, before we got to get out of here, I'm going to read a couple of things here.
Well, we got
real quick. Victor Aldridge asks, could Silas Bolden take a kickoff or punt back against Colorado State? Definitely punt. He's going to be the number one punt returner. Matthew Golden, number one kickoff returner. But Silas Bolden, it wouldn't shock me. Zane Petty, with losing Fasusi to OU today, help us with turn time next year. Potentially, but I think Texas is in a pretty good spot for turn time right now. The junior offensive lineman from North Crowley, who, by the way, I saw him last week, he's interesting because he's about 279, 280. He's lost 13, 14 pounds, looks really good, athletic. He'll play at 305, 310 in college. But boy, is he a good-looking athlete moving, especially when he's pulling at in North Crowley there. There was one more I was gonna hit on. Hold on one second. This one, Westlake Horn. I wanted to hit on this one. Anyone know much about Lorena D-tackle Jackson Blackwell, who's visiting for the Colorado State game, committed to Baylor? Yeah, so I've been reporting on Jackson Blackwell for a while. I actually went to see him at his district track meet last year. I think that was in Cameron at Yohai. Is it still called Yohai? It was in Cameron. And I was on my way up to Dallas, and I knew Texas was taking a look at Blackwell. And he kind of popped under the radar at the Under Armour camp in Dallas in early March. He put up big-time testing numbers. He is one of the top power lifters. He has a 700-pound squat as a junior in high school. He is a kid who's 6'2" and change, about 305, 310, really naturally strong, also is a workout warrior, does a lot of kickboxing. I mean, he's going to maximize his talent. Wherever it takes him, there's no question he's going to maximize his talent. He is a over the ball, I think, type of D tackle at the next level. Texas has not offered him, but they did go see him in the spring. They've been keeping tabs on him. And I'll end this with somebody also asked in the chat, and we didn't have time to get to it. Update on the 3 defensive linemen that Texas recently offered. They're all in the Peach State, which I like. I know Ryan Nelson likes that because he likes to watch all those guys play. I think he lives in the area. But they are Caleb Bell from Milton in Alpharetta. His father, Kendrell Bell, all SEC linebacker at Georgia, Pro Bowler in the NFL. Caleb Bell told me he's going to visit Texas this season. He doesn't know when. He's committed to Arkansas. Then there was Braxton Kyle was the latest offer out of North Gwinnett. Georgia's also offered him. That's a long shot, really talented over-the-ball player. And then the first one to be offered was Joseph Mbaktu at Grayson. which is where Nick Brooks goes to school. He's committed to Florida. They were his first big offer. Auburn and Texas offered back-to-back days last week. Key with him, this is his first year playing organized football. 6'5", 285. Moved to the States from Cameroon when he was younger, played soccer, basketball. First year of organized football, really impressed in the spring and so far on some practice tape. So people have started offering him. Florida got on him early. I'm for more offers in the state of Georgia at defensive line in this class and moving forward. Georgia can't take all those guys. And I'll say this, I counted up 22 Power 5 level defensive linemen, interior defensive linemen in the state of Georgia in the 25 class. That's an astronomical number for one state. In Texas, we probably have 6 or 7. So that's how talented and deep defensive line is in the Peach State right now, and I think moving forward. And that's just not the Atlanta metro area. That's also Savannah, some of those South Georgia areas as well. A lot of big athletes that play on the defensive line in the Peach State.
All right, guys, let's knock out these supers. This one here from Victor. He said, and thank you, Victor. Hey, Bobby, my uncle Thomas Aldridge wanted to let you know that he gave out Texas flags to all his Arkansas customers. So he thought you would get a kick out of that.
I love it. Way to go, Thomas.
Hey, Victor, how tall is LaMarcus's son? Because I know he's got a son coming up that's playing youth ball. How tall is his son these days? And if you don't get the answer to that today, let us know tomorrow.
And then Jay Lee with the next super chat. Does Casey Thompson have the record for playing at the most schools?
Oh, man. I don't know. I mean, what Dylan Gabriel's been at 3. There's been several that have been 3 and 4, in my opinion. I don't know.
He's up there.
Yeah, he definitely is. He's been at 4. If someone's been at 5, that's the only way ahead of him.
And then our last one for today, guys, comes from Marty. And Marty says, this question's for the Manscaped Messiah. What type of season do you envision Cam Williams and DJ Campbell having for them to be drafted day 1 or day 2?
So Cam Williams is easier than DJ Campbell because Cam Williams is going to play a right tackle spot against some really good athletes in the SEC. And in his pass pro, he's going to be really good in run blocking. If he shows well in pass pro, I think he's going to vault up the NFL draft boards. And I'm not saying he couldn't be a first-round pick. I could definitely see him being a second-round pick. And for those that think, man, he started 1 game, is it really possible? Marius Mims started 8 games at Georgia, went in the first round. It's definitely possible when you have an NFL player in front of you and those guys kind of watch your development and they talk to Kyle Flood and Sarkisian about you and look, then you go on and have a really good year and you have all the size, the measurables, the feet, and everything the NFL is looking for. DJ Campbell, exceptional run blocker, attitude, toughness. Pass pro is going to be huge for him year 1 to year 2 if he's going to have a chance to make that jump. And the other thing with DJ Campbell, since he's not as tall, he's broad-shouldered, not necessarily long arm. His wingspan is going to be bigger than his arm length in terms of measurements go, as far as that correlation goes. But really good athlete, really tough, great feet, flexibility. Pass pro is going to be big for him, Bobby.
It will be. I just can't believe you're not taking on that Manscaped Messiah nickname. That may be your new nickname, Mr. Hamilton.
I like it.
Yeah, Manscaped Messiah.
I'll put that on my letter jacket.
There you go. Put it on the sleeve.
Yeah.
Well, I know. You know what? You need a tattoo of that.
I was about to say the same exact thing, Bobby. That's coming soon. We're going to have a picture of that. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football. We want to thank Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm, along with HelloFresh, Gooder, and Manscaped for sponsoring today's show. Thank you all for tuning in, for the great questions, the super chats. Head on over to ontexasfootball.com if you haven't already. Join in on the discussion over there. A lot of good things being discussed and a lot of news, as we can't be on YouTube all the time. Bobby, speaking of YouTube, what you got coming up later today?
Yeah, absolutely. We got state of the program. Jerry, myself, CJ Vogel, going to sit down and talk about what it looks like last week of practice before official game prep. They have started actually working on some stuff with Colorado State, but also a little recruiting preview as well, going into today's announcement from Michael Fasusi, and then looking forward. We also have a live stream tonight around 7 o'clock as well. Some good stuff going on. Also, join us, if Blake mentioned this, but the message boards over on Texas Football, really appreciate you guys participating in them. Please join us if you would. It's where we hang out every day on TexasFootball.com. If you want a subscription, right now it's $20 off the annual price. If you use the code OTFOG, you have to use the code OTFOG to get the $20 off a 1-year subscription to On Texas Football.
Hey, I wanted to bring this up real quick, Blake. Victor Aldridge answered the question. Jaden Aldridge, son of LaMarcus, keep him on your radar. We certainly will do that. Thank you very much.
All right. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Ring the bell so you're notified anytime that we post content or go live. And we will be back same time, same place tomorrow morning. So for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton,